February 2009. Scientists have descended upon the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. Their aim, to solve a mystery. 3 years ago, under the spotlight of the world's press, the discovery of a new tomb was revealed. Inside, a cluster of coffins, priceless artifacts, but no mummy. All the evidence pointed to a connection with the boy king, Tutankhamun, buried just 15 yards away. But just as the archaeologists were closing in on what it could all mean, they had to leave. Now, Dr. Otto Schaden and his team are back to answer the question, whose tomb was this? Their search for a name is turned on its head when the contents of the chamber tell them it was not used as a tomb at all. So what was it for?
What were these things doing here? Because there are no parallels for them anywhere else.
This astonishing story has been unfolding for 3 years. And in this 2009 world exclusive, we're back on location as the drama unfolds. What looks like trash turns out to be archaeological gold dust.
We've just been recovering someone's body parts, flesh.
And what they are about to uncover is a world we were never supposed to see. The secret domain of the embalmer.
This could really sort of rewrite this aspect of Egyptian history.
Could it be a glimpse into the funeral HQ of the most famous pharaoh of them all, Tutankhamun?
In Tutankhamun's tomb, virtually anything he used in life is there. In this case, what you have are not his items from daily life, but what's left over, possibly from his embalming and funeral preparations.
The final verdict on the mystery chamber can now be revealed. Egypt, the legendary Valley of the Kings. Archaeologist Dr. Otto Schaden is back to answer the riddle of the tomb called KV63.
It's a great relief to get back and just to continue the work.
It's the most important find of his career. In fact, it's the most important find in the valley since King Tut.
It's the first tomb found in the Valley of the Kings since Howard Carter discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun back in 1922. There had this 83-year gap, and then up came KV63.
Howard Carter's discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb amazed the world. But 8 decades passed, and no more tombs were found. Many believed there must be nothing left to find. Dr. Schaden has proved them wrong. Back in 2006, during a routine excavation on a workman's hut, he discovered something that rocked the world once more.
After working here for 15 years and sort of under the radar, suddenly we were in the limelight.
It was an international sensation.
The first tomb discovered in more than 8 years.
Spectacular archaeological discovery and intact.
For almost a century, there had been 62 known tombs in the Valley of the Kings. Dr. Schaden's team had found the 63rd. When they entered it, they set out on a journey like no other.
We discovered we had what was essentially archaeological virgin territory right under our feet.
Inside, they found 28 storage jars and 7 coffins, and against the farthest wall, what everyone was hoping for, a sealed coffin. Finding a sealed coffin in a newly discovered tomb in the Valley of the Kings is what archaeologists dream of. Everyone there knew if there was a mummy inside, it would be the first to be found here since Tutankhamun. And everyone also knew that they were standing just 15 yards from the body of the boy king himself.
KV63, in my opinion, is a very important discovery because it was found after King Tut and found near King Tut.
The bodies of Tut's wife, Ankhesenamun, and his mother, Kia, have never been found. Some experts suspected the coffin might contain one of them. Archaeologists, the Egyptian authorities, and the world's press were clamoring to find out. What they could not predict then was that 3 years later, an even more startling connection to the pharaoh would come to light. The focus of the 2009 dig is to open the remaining 16 storage jars. Sealed by ancient Egyptian hands, they are 3,000-year-old time capsules. They will find artifacts which they hope may reveal a name.
We've just pulled out a jar stopper, which is made out of mud, and it's also covered with a lot of whitewash. And it is important because it's got a stamp on it, which might have some sort of name on it.
They will find the snapped pieces of a decorated bed.
Everyone got excited when, through all the rubble in the jar, we see a little lion's head staring out at us.
And pots which represent offerings to the gods.
They were used to have little bits of whatever in them, whether it's little bits of resin, little bit of incense, little bit of dates.
And they will find linen bags of all shapes and sizes. The team will have to decode all these artifacts. And they know from the most vital moment in their excavation so far that nothing in KV-63 is ever as it first appears. When they first found the tomb, the opening of the sealed coffin yielded clues that are still key for the investigation. Now known as Coffin E, it was surrounded by the jars and other treasures. Before they could open it, they had to embark upon a delicate and hazardous operation.
Well, when we first got close to Coffin E in the tomb, it took a while because it was back in the corner and we had to clear everything in front of it before we could work on it.
In amongst 3,000-year-old dirt were extraordinary finds. They included a gold coffinette, similar to ones found in King Tut's tomb.
This is made in a royal workshop, something for a royal member.
There was also a beautiful painted coffin. Once the path was clear, they could inspect Coffin E where it lay. Dr. Shotton's priority? To find a name. He scans beneath the thick resin, searching every inch for traces of hieroglyphs.
Possibly a mouth, which is the R. These three tall signs, you would get K, V, H, Kebish. And then under here, if we're correct, there should be a horned viper. It could be Kebish Senuet, which is one of the sons of Horus.
It's the sign of someone revered by the gods, someone important. But resin covers the clincher, the deceased's name. And time to search runs out. The coffin must be strengthened with tissue. It will cover up any possible evidence.
Today, I will put the tissue paper on around, so if you need something, you should do it now.
In search of a breakthrough, Dr. Shotton turns to 21st century technology. First, he tries using UV light to enhance the faint outlines. With no luck.
What looked like an inner border just on the shoulder of the coffin a few days ago doesn't even show up with this. So we're going to have to go back and look at our photographs.
Next, Dr. Shotton tries analyzing detailed digital photos, enlarging, manipulating, and trying to enhance the images. But even with this high-tech equipment, he is unable to decipher what is there. The grooves and indentations carved in the wood are just too faint. Dr. Shotton must remove the resin to have any hope of finding a name. But he won't be able to do this until the coffin is opened. Dr. Nadia Lokma can't wait and decides to explore by gently probing inside.
What I feel from the spatula, it is something soft. Oh yes, here. There is something inside it, but what's inside it, we don't know.
The big moment has arrived. The world's press descends on the Valley of the Kings. Dr. Zahi Hawass, Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, will open the coffin personally. Everybody wants to know if the coffin contains a mummy.
Excuse me.
The press are out in such force that there's barely room for the archaeologists.
Any sound that I will hear in English or in Arabic, I will dismiss everyone out from this tomb. and I mean it. دعنا اطلع. لا أحمد. Dr. Shadden, please come in.
This is the biggest secret to emerge from Egypt in almost a century, and it's time to lift the lid.
Okay. ارفع اللوح.
The coffin is opened. It does not contain a mummy. But there is a treasure trove of artifacts, unseen by human eyes for 3 millennia.
And you can see necklaces that has flower. Look at this flower that comes from it. And this is the remains of linen. And you can see in one piece here, it's a casing of gold.
We were hoping for a mummy. No, this is better than a mummy. Look, this is like a bag. It's papyrus, and it have a handle here. But my goodness, this is a treasure.
These finds thrill the team because every one of them is a clue to finding a name. But 3 years on, their quest dramatically changes direction. The chamber is not what it appears. All the evidence is there. Can they finally reveal the truth? Dr. Otto Schaden and his team have returned to Egypt's historic new tomb with a mystery to solve.
Biggest hope would be that the name of the original intended owner might pop up somewhere.
They have a chamber with no one inside and what might appear to be heaps of garbage. To the archaeologists, it's treasure. But even they don't realize yet quite how precious it is. Gradually, they will piece together the story behind this discovery. Their odyssey into the past begins as they take the first jar and prise off its lid.
There's a very immediate sense of excitement because no one has touched these things since they were sealed. So when we open them, we are the first people who are really having a contact after 3,000 plus years.
First, they tap around the edge of the plaster seal. There is a mud plug underneath. Every jar is a glimpse into the lives of people from 3,000 years ago.
Well, this is in fact quite nice because the fill top up to the neck and up is real. I mean, in terms of it's got some other more exciting things in it.
Many interesting things in this one.
We've got a lot of resin in this one.
Every little bit of evidence may work together to give us a more distinct answer.
These might be part of a funerary feast.
They find seeds and date pits.
So it's not just that these were things that were used in a practical way. It could be that they were part of what people were eating and drinking just before the interment. Are you excited, Al?
I'm excited.
They're excited because the contents of these jars could add to the evidence they found in 2006. A matrix of clues which connect in the most extraordinary way. 3 years ago, they expected to be able to identify the tomb's owner easily. And searching through the first batch of jars, Dr. Salima Ikram thought she was on the brink of success.
I think we should be getting close to finding someone's name soon because we've opened 10 jars by now.
These pieces of mud are seals and could be the key.
Whenever the priests who were in charge of the Valley of the Kings closed something up, they would put their stamp on it, and this is the seal of the necropolis.
Cemetery seals are one of the best pieces of dating evidence in the Valley of the Kings. The tiny inscriptions may bear a name. It's a major breakthrough. Mansour Barek of the Supreme Council of Antiquities is called to the site. Looking at a photo of one of the seals, he reveals the team's discovery.
It's clear that this is Ba Atum. Ba is the bird, and this is Atum. So it is a real good evidence for us.
The inscription bears the symbol for a god called the Aten, or the sun disk. The Aten was worshipped for a brief time in Egypt's history known as the Romana period. It was linked to two important pharaohs.
This is something from the Amarna because, Amarna means, the time of Akhenaten and also the time of Tutankhamun.
Dr. Shadden has found further evidence which points to the time frame spanning the reign of Tutankhamun.
We have another seal, one of the best preserved ones, nearly perfect. That one is important because it's also known from impressions found in the tomb of Tutankhamun.
They are almost identical. For the first time, Dr. Shadden is able to date KV-63 to the reign of a specific pharaoh.
The way this looks, we're getting a pretty good idea of what royal name or names will appear. Just on the basis of the seals and their relationship to the nearby tombs here in the valley. At this stage, I would say it's most likely going to be Tutankhamun if we find any names on the seals. So I'm taking a risk by giving you a name here.
Dating the chamber to Tut's time is a giant step forward, but the team is still puzzled. This is a tomb. Why no mummy? Why no name?
Morning, Salima.
Hey, Ken, how are you?
Good.
As she continues emptying the jars, Dr. Ikram finds large quantities of natron, a white, powdery mineral salt ancient Egyptian embalmers used to dry out the corpse. Once dried, the body was preserved in oil and wrapped in bandages. This tomb contains lots of natron. And Dr. Ikram has found a bonus ingredient: human flesh.
What's nice is we've just been recovering someone's body parts. Flesh. Here. You're not worried.
Now they know for certain, at some point, these materials were used to produce a mummy.
Because sometimes when you're doing the mummification, you lose chunks.
This is the waste material from the mummification process. Ancient Egyptians believed they could live forever if their bodies were perfectly preserved. The mummy became a shelter for their spirit in the afterlife. But where are the mummies? Like King Tut's, tombs normally bear the name of the deceased. But the first tomb found here in over 80 years has no occupant and no ID. But the team's luck is about to change. A major clue survives. Finally, they have an inscription.
That's what you want to look for.
And then they find more.
Don't say I don't ever give you presents.
The texts are written in an ancient Egyptian script known as hieratic. Otto begins to translate.
It starts out with year 5, and it mentions wine. This word I'll have to work out.
This fragment is from a wine jar made during the 5th year of a pharaoh's reign. The key word, the pharaoh's name, is missing. But together with the other artifacts, Dr. Shadden hopes he can identify the time period when the tomb was filled.
The materials inside certainly seem to fall somewhere around Dynasty 18. We've got similar pottery, similar miniature bowls, similar jar covers. So we know it's going to fall basically in this 18th dynasty era.
The 18th dynasty was a line of pharaohs that ruled Egypt 3,300 years ago. The most famous of them was Tutankhamun. Dr. Shadden finds another connection to the king.
This little miniature bowl, for example, often used with offerings or things like this, and it has a little inscription on the inside which reads offerings and the number 28.
Really? So they numbered them?
Yes, so this magically represents 28 offerings of, I presume, whatever you want.
Oh, really? Okay.
Ancient paintings reveal the Egyptians placed these bowls in tombs as symbols of food, for the journey to the afterlife. The design here is familiar to Dr. Shodden. He's seen it before.
It is of interest because similar miniature bowls came from 54.
KV-54 is a small treasure trove of offerings taken from the tomb of King Tut. Along with everything else they've found, the links to Tutankhamun are mounting up. What they will come to reveal is something no one was ever supposed to see. It concerns an event that consumed the thoughts of every pharaoh, his journey to the afterlife. But just as the team's investigation gathers momentum, the elements turn against them. It was late into the blistering Egyptian summer of 2006. The tomb and its precious artifacts had been exposed to the climate for 3 months. Dr. Otto Schaden and his team were exhausted. And at 130 degrees Fahrenheit, it became too hot to work. And there's another problem. This area is vulnerable to flash floods.
The most severe danger comes from the hills to the west.
If they continued now, they could lose everything. They must seal up the tomb and leave the Valley of the Kings. But there are still 16 storage jars to open and a mine of information to piece together. When they return 3 years later, the mystery of the mummyless tomb will finally be solved. February 2009. Dr. Otto Schaden and his team are back in Egypt. Their mission, to solve the mystery of a tomb which bears no name and houses no mummy.
Been planning for this season for a long time, and after a while you start to get frustrated when you keep planning and nothing comes about as you had planned.
Serious health problems delayed that return.
I had a mild heart attack, and the next year when I was ready to come out in January 2008, my doctors decided I needed an operation.
Dr. Schaden's been digging in Egypt for over 30 years, and he's determined not to let a heart attack get in the way of cracking the secrets surrounding the discovery of a lifetime. Now that they're back, the team wants to understand what the mystery chamber means. Dr. Schaden needs to put a name to the tomb, but it's a big challenge. So far, clues on key artifacts are either covered in resin, scratched out, or whitewashed. Dr. Salima Ikram and Professor Earl Ertman will open the 16 remaining storage jars. And the world's leading authority on ancient textiles, Dr. Elise Van Rouge, must discover the purpose of the 3,000-year-old pillows found stuffed inside this coffin. Their findings will lead to an extraordinary verdict. Dr. Ikram and Professor Ertman make a start on the jars.
Beautiful.
Searching for vital clues in these ancient time capsules.
Bingo. Today, we're working on this pot that we have, and so far it's yielded lots of different colored chaff and some pottery. The chaff is basically the residue from harvesting when you have wheat or barley or what have you, and this is the little leftover bits from the seeds. One of the interesting things is, of course, in the ancient world, because they didn't have little styrofoam bits, this is what they used to pack things to stop it from rattling.
The chaff is ancient high-quality packing material, and later Dr. Ikram will discover an altogether different use for it. As she continues working on the jars, Dr. Schaden is determined to find a name on the once sealed coffin. His team is painstakingly removing the resin with alcohol and acetone.
Biggest hope would be that name of the original intended owner might pop up. Yeah, there are some shapes appearing. Still too early. It's still black. When the resin is gone, hopefully the signs will be clear.
Finally, there is progress.
But on this side, on the lid, it ended with the text, revered by the god Thoth. And then it looks like it's the Osiris, which is the deceased.
he has found references to gods, but every human name has been deliberately vandalized. Ultimately, this highly specific removal of individual names will actually help to solve the mystery. But for now, Dr. Schaden is in the dark. Whomever the owner, Dr. Ikram and Professor Ertmann have found proof of tomb raiders of a non-human kind.
We often find fly larvae, or pupae, and that shows that the flies were breeding and maggots were breeding on the body. No matter how much care is taken, flies are all pervasive and they get in and become maggoty, and so you have fly pupae sort of wound up inside the body, despite it being a very high-class burial.
And high-class burials call for high-class pillows like these. They are inscribed with a blessing for the dead, eternity and happiness in the afterlife. The pillow's thread count, up to 80 threads per centimeter, can only mean one thing to textile expert Dr. Elise Van Rouge.
They used a linen that was a quality that would be used in a royal household. These are the first pillows of this kind that have ever been found in Egypt.
They are unique.
I've also seen some of the textiles that come from the tomb of Tutankhamun. They have similar qualities, and although he had lots of clothing items and all kinds of textiles, there weren't any pillows in his tomb. I have never seen anything like this before.
Dr. Ikram has also found something she's never uncovered before.
We have one more bizarre thing that this jar has yielded. Generally, we get little linen bags that are filled with natron. This time, we have linen bags that are filled with chaff. Now, this could be a very clever trick in mummification because, of course, the chaff also absorbs liquids, but maybe at first they use natron and then the second level of drying you out and giving you perhaps a nice smell comes from the chaff.
This uncommon find is another parallel to King Tut, because bags of chaff came from his burial too. And the jars have given up something entirely unexpected, broken into pieces. It's a wooden bed.
Of course, everyone got excited when, through all the rubble in the jar, we see a little lion's head staring out at us. Even indications of the mane. Eyes are a little off-center, but cute. One of the more unique artifacts that we have for this year.
And Dr. Schaden thinks he knows how it was used.
I think the use would be to keep the coffin, or perhaps the mummy at some stage of the process, off the ground. We do have some pieces of wood with some attachments which might serve as legs. They would not be attached to this, but this could sit on it and it would lift off the ground.
Finally, 3 years after its discovery, KV-63 is empty. Everything has been examined, and the evidence is starting to add up. The odd collection of coffins with their names scrubbed out. The natron, chaff, bowls, pillows, and a bed all lead to one conclusion. There's no mummy because this place was never used as a tomb. The artifacts are the tools of the trade of an embalmer. Dr. Schaden believes that this is a glimpse into the secret world of a pharaoh's funeral HQ. And this may explain why there was no body in the sealed coffin.
It's possible that the coffin had been made for someone, may never been used. That person could have been deemed somehow unfit for the next life, and so they chiseled his name out. Then they may have tried to recycle it, and so they covered it with resin and used it as storage, like a trunk, a fancy steamer trunk.
An inscription reveals that one of these storage coffins was originally intended for a royal nurse. Why embalmers used her coffin as a trunk, we'll never know. But it's the very presence of coffins used for storage that will provide Dr. Schaden with evidence of another link to Tutankhamun. February 2009. In the Valley of the Kings, Dr. Otto Schaden and his team have discovered that Egypt's new tomb, KV-63, is in fact not a tomb at all. So what is it?
We're sure the tomb was begun and probably was intended to be used as a tomb.
But now Dr. Schaden and his team believe that it was commandeered for a different purpose.
It turned out not to be used as a tomb, but an embalmer's cache.
A cache is a concealed hoard of precious items, and these belong to the ancient Egyptian embalmers of someone special.
What it is a collection of embalming goods, which may and very likely has a connection with a royal burial in the valley. The materials are almost identical to what we find in the Tutankhamun cache.
The evidence speaks for itself.
Everything from the pottery to the large storage jars to some of the seal impressions and the year 5 wine jar label, everything points to somewhere around the time of Tutankhamun.
The similarity to items in Tut's burial and the matching dates leads to a new and startling theory. It's a real possibility that this treasure trove is not just from the time period of Tut's reign, but is linked directly to Tut and his death. Dr. Schaden now thinks that if KV-63 is an embalmer's cache, it could be from the burial of Tutankhamun.
In Tutankhamun's tomb, you find many things in jars or various containers. You find wine, clothes, sandals, walking sticks, his bow, virtually anything he used in life is there. In this case, what you have are not his items from daily life, but what's left over possibly from his embalming and funeral preparations.
It's an exciting theory, and there seems to be more evidence to support it. The clue lies in the circumstances surrounding Tutankhamun's death. Tut was not buried in an elaborate complex like the amazing constructions commissioned by many pharaohs. The tomb he ended up in was a rush job.
This is not really cut as a royal tomb. It would have been a different shape, a different size. There would have been much more decoration on it of the type you see in other big tombs in the valley.
His chamber's decoration lacks detail and adornment, and his tomb contains second-hand items.
There are many signs in this tomb that elements were reused.
Like this sarcophagus, made for someone else. Tutankhamun's tomb was smaller than it should have been, so there may not have been space for the sacred materials from his mummification.
But they already had a partially made tomb that they could use.
Conveniently close to Tut's burial chamber, KV-63 would have been an obvious choice. Finding this extraordinary cache has revealed new information about the embalming rituals of elite ancient Egyptians. But for the archaeologists, it also leads to yet more questions.
We've got this, the bed. What was that used for? Was that used to dry the body out, or was it used to lay it for anointing? That's a big question mark. And we've got these enigmatic pieces of wood with legs. Each one has 4 legs, and they're probably a set of 3. And was that used to lay the body on because there's sort of smears on them? And were these because they were covered with oils which were dribbled over the body, or did they have another purpose? And also we have a huge number of pillows, and many of them have smears of resinous material on them. Were they used to prop up the body and make it more comfortable? Was it used by people at the funeral banquet? What were these things doing here, and what were they used for, and why are they in this embalming cache? Because there are no parallels for them anywhere else.
While questions remain, KV-63 has revealed a hidden world we were never supposed to witness.
It all adds to the overall picture of the size and the scope of this embalming system. And of course, we're adding more natron.
Natron is the mineral salt embalmers use to dry out the body. If the KV-63 cache is related to Tut, the natron found here may have been used to mummify his very corpse.
We had almost 300 pounds, 175 kilos in 2006, and you've seen the big bags full. So we're going to have 450, maybe 500 pounds of natron, which I think Salima claims should be enough for a decent-sized mummy.
Over 450 pounds of natron is a significant find for expert Dr. Salima Ikram.
This gives us a basic estimate for how much natron would be considered proper and appropriate for mummifying a human being. KV63 is really for the first time where we get an answer of some sort as to how much natron was used.
So whether or not it's all for one, it could be all tuts, or it could be tut and someone else closely associated. But it's got to be in that period.
So when Dr. Ikram found human flesh attached to a chunk of natron back in 2006,
What's nice is we've just been recovering someone's body parts, flesh.
she could have been handling the mortal remains of the boy pharaoh, Tutankhamun. 3 years later, her research is bringing her even closer to him, revealing details of the most important ritual in a pharaoh's existence, his journey into the afterlife. Now, that ritual is laid bare. Searching 3,000-year-old clues in chamber KV63, archaeologists have uncovered the private world of the embalmer. The aim of mummification was to preserve the dead body for eternity, so the deceased could continue successfully into the afterlife. It was a meticulous ritual.
One has to go through all of what was found in the jars and the coffins to try and see how it refines our knowledge of mummification.
And leading Egyptologist Dr. Salima Ikram's finds and analysis have shed new light on the embalmer's work.
We know things that they were very careful about drying out nostrils, which is something we didn't think they cared about. So they've got these tiny little bags that were stuffed up the nose. They have noodles and things to clean out the nose.
We know now the embalmers dried out the nose after they'd removed the brain via the nostrils. Then they removed the contents of the abdomen. The cavities were washed out, dried with natron, and packed with materials like chaff and rags. Dr. Ikram is fascinated by what they've found.
They have different shaped kind of bags of natron that would have been put in different places. And so obviously the different shapes of the bag were dependent on where they were placed in the body, and this is something we didn't really know about. And little aspects of the whole funeral ritual, like these mud trays, and they were obviously made fresh. They were sort of slapped together, and then they were used for part of this whole funeral ritual. And then, while they were still wet, they're squished and thrown into the jars. And you can still see the squish marks and the fingerprints and the thumbprints of the people who were using and disposing of them, as well as sometimes where they were making them, where they've got little pinchy marks at the corners. So we've got these rather enigmatic items, but again, they do shed light on what was going on.
The embalming process required many kinds of receptacle.
Nowadays we have plastic, but in ancient Egypt you only had pots or wooden boxes, so everything was stored in a pot.
These pots held the embalmer's preparations. The corpse was dehydrated in natron for 6 weeks. Then the embalmers rubbed in highly scented oils and resins to deodorize, cure, and scent the body.
And it's quite nice because they brought things, oils and unguents and resin in pots, and then later on they were smashed up ritually and put into other pots. So you've got these sort of encapsulated histories all tied together in large jars.
Every item involved in the funerary process took on sacred status. Nothing could be thrown away. This now allows the team a unique perspective on the embalming ritual as they delve into the jars and into the past.
And another lovely thing was this massive Q-tip, for want of a better word. It's a long piece of reed with linen at top, and it was all sort of oily. And I don't think it was used as a light, but it was probably used to ram bits of oil into hard-to-get parts of the body. So you have, in addition to, the cutting tools, etc., you have all sorts of things that are being used by the embalmers as they are putting together the body.
The final stage was to wrap the body in strips of linen. Tutankhamun's mummy had been anointed so thickly in oils and resin that it stuck fast in the coffin. In 1922, Howard Carter cut it out with hot knives and then unwrapped the king. Now, a new generation of archaeologists has amplified our knowledge of ancient Egyptian life in a completely different way. This was not a treasure hunt of old, but a forensic investigation. The secret to their success? They let the evidence talk to them. Dr. Shodden and his team have enhanced our understanding of how the pharaohs were sent into the afterlife.
While it's not a king's tomb, didn't have any mummies, the fact that it's the first tomb found in the valley since Howard Carter has given us an immense amount of satisfaction. And that's something I can live with.
When they first uncovered KV-63, Dr. Shodden hoped for a link to royalty. This is the Valley of the Kings, a royal graveyard. New kingdom rulers like Ramses and Seti were buried here. Dr. Shodden found that royal link, with objects the like of which he'd never seen before. And even without a body, the connection to royalty would prove closer than he ever expected. The archaeologist's first dramatic find: a gold coffinette. In perfect condition.
Wow. This is so beautiful. This is made in a royal workshop, something for a royal member.
Then, on close inspection, the pillows hiding the gold coffinette proved to be extremely high-quality linen, 80 threads per centimeter.
They used a linen that was a quality that would be used in a royal household. I have never seen anything like this before.
Their first breakthrough in pinning down the ancient time period when KV-63 was closed was finding the seals. The first dated to a brief period in history during the reigns of both Akhenaten and Tut. Then Dr. Shodden discovered a second, which confirmed a link directly to Tut's reign. Virtually identical ones were found with Tutankhamun. Wine jar fragments provided yet more evidence of a date.
There's no question about the date of the closing of 63. It's just a matter of, do we put it in 1337 or 1334? I mean, that's what we're dealing with here. And so it could be during Tut's time, it could be right after, but it's so close.
The time frame points to Tut. The artifacts point to embalmers. The mystery chamber has finally been decoded. KV-63 is an embalmer's cache, quite possibly belonging to the boy king.
This cache can really change what we know about mummification and funerary rituals, and so this could really sort of rewrite this aspect of Egyptian history.
KV-63 has proved unique. Its discovery has given the archaeologists a chance to travel over 3,000 years back in time to uncover the secrets of the pharaohs.
In KV-63, you have this sort of frozen moment in time where the embalmers stopped work and put everything down almost, like in the tomb of Tutankhamun, where you have everything that he needed to live forever. So food and drink and everything else is sort of frozen there for all of eternity.
Like Howard Carter over 80 years before, Dr. Shodden and his team have been pulled into the mysterious world of Tutankhamun. The discovery of the pharaoh's intact tomb caused a sensation around the globe. To this day, his life and death continue to fascinate. And now, the KV-63 Odyssey is the latest chapter in a 3,000-year-old saga.